Hope everybody's having a good Saturday. This is Steve, Hobo with Wood, and we are live 3 p.m. Eastern Time. I know we got a lot of folks around the world tuning in right now, and that's why we do this time slot to make it a little bit easier for folks on the other side of the globe if you believe the Earth is round, or on the other side of the disc if you believe it's flat. So what we're going to look at today, don't anticipate a large crowd in here. So if you've got questions, you're most likely going to get them addressed for sure, because we're not going to have a lot of people at this time slot. But if you have questions during the stream, put in the comment field question mark, and then your question that jumps out at me so I can see it. Exclamation points if you just want to say, "Hey, stupid, I did this." And I'll see those. But we're going to look at a couple of topics today that I've had to address this week. One, I'm just going to discuss, not because I haven't done it yet myself, just discuss some of the roadblocks that I've seen others run into. And that's where they're trying to engrave or mark on fabrics, on cloth. I helped through a little bit of troubleshooting with some of that, made some suggestions this week. I say I haven't done it, but actually I have done it. It's just been a while. I've done leather, but I've also done some cloth too. But one of the best examples of it was that mom with the laser. She did it on a great big, on one of her denim jackets. And that right there is a hint of what I think about some of the success is. She did it on denim jacket. So if you haven't seen her video on engraving or marking, because not obviously not engraving, marking her denim jacket, that's kind of a cool video to go look at. And then I had a request, and that was also somebody needing some help. But I also had a request this week about some coins, engraving two-sided coins. And I got a whole, this is out of one sheet of 12 by 12 or 300 by 300, whole stack of coins. And I did not maximize the sheet on this because the user that had this specific question, they have one of the original, the OG LaserMatic 10s. And the LaserMatic 10 has a little bit of a different setup. It doesn't have the pins for the honeycombs for locking that honeycomb into place. And they have an upgraded laser module. They went to the 1020 switchable module that was not originally on the LaserMatic 10, the MK1. And because it's a bigger module, you lose some of your workspace on the MK1 with the larger module, and you have to accommodate that in positioning the honeycomb and all that kind of stuff. All that comes into play. And I'm going to, I made some modifications to their file and shared it with them. And this is the coin that I cut out, the Hobo Nation. Check out my wood. And then on the flip side is the Hobo with Wood at Gmail, custom engraving, arts and crafts, and promotional gifts. And this thing doesn't autofocus. So if I bring it in close, it's. So I'm going to talk about the headaches, not the headaches, the hurdles of using the MK1, especially with the upgraded laser module, how you can get this perfect alignment. In fact, let's see here if I can show you two sides. They're perfectly centered, and that was one side's engraved and then the other side's engraved, and they're perfectly centered on each side of the coin. So I'll talk about that. And like I said, I'm going to give you my 2 cents and suggestions on trying to mark fabric. So just before I get started on any of those, see if there's any immediate questions, comments. Got our regulars here, and I'm glad to see everybody. Um, I also, for the first time in a long time, I accepted an invitation to review and evaluate a laser. Um, and the laser I've got coming is going to be what I would consider more of a first laser. If you're wanting to experiment a little bit with lasers, but you don't want to make that financial commitment of spending, over $1,000 for a premium product, but you want to get familiar with the software, you want to learn to use Lightburn, and start getting used to what you have to do with how different materials will require different settings to get over that first initial learning curve. And also, if you do craft shows and craft fairs, carrying the XW to a craft show that's a little bit cumbersome. But even taking the regular LaserMatic 2 or the MK1, they're great and they're perfect for craft shows and events because they're fully enclosed. You're going to be safe with all of the laser or what is that, plexiglass and all. But they're big. And typically, if you're going to do things at a craft show or an art fair, whatever, you're not going to be wanting to do projects that are going to be taking 20 or 30 minutes to do because people don't want to wait that long. And plus, if you're taking 20, 30 minutes to do one thing at a craft show and it's not but a 4-hour show, you're not going to make 6 or 7 things and you're out of time. So this is a small compact laser I'm going to review, and it's a Genmitsu. In fact, let's see here. There we go. It's one of the small little 10 watts, and it only has a workspace of 100 by 100 millimeters. And it has a retail price of only $299. So that's going to be coming hopefully in the next week or so, and I'll get a chance. And that 100 by 100 millimeter would be perfect for if you're going to be going to a craft show and you're going to be you've got the anodized dog tags, and you just need to put a name and a phone number on it. And, you can set up a template. You have a little template that you put in there, and you can just drop a dog tag in there, hit a button, and knock out a dog tag in 2 or 3 minutes or less. And even do coasters. Craft shows and craft fairs, personalized or monogrammed coasters and that kind of thing are popular. And to be able to monogram some slate coasters or even the bamboo or just wooden coasters, something like this is easy and compact to carry. Like I said, it's got a really low initial start out price. I don't know anything about the quality yet. We're going to find out, and I'm going to share it with you, good or bad. But this is the first laser I've accepted the invitation to look at in quite some time. I'm super brand loyal to my Roly, but that's premium, top quality diode lasers. And if you're going to be serious about it, and you're going to say, all right, I have every intention of tackling this, I'm going to wrap my head around it, and you feel comfortable with technology, then maybe you save the $300 you'd spend on this little bitty compact thing and put it towards your purchase of the Roly and the banners. And I will have right now, let's go ahead and put up, there's my banner for the Roly. If you're considering getting a Roly, use my link. It helps me out, helps the channel out, lets Leo know that I'm sending you there. And we're going to be talking about a couple of the roadblocks today with the MK1, the original 10 watt. Especially if you have the 10 watt with the larger 1020 module and the headaches that you have to overcome there. I keep saying headaches; they're just hurdles, So we're gonna look at that. But before I jump into that, I'm going to, like I said, I'm not going to do a roll call. If you're here, you're here, and I appreciate you being here. I will try to acknowledge all of the question marks and all of the exclamation points. I'm going to mark the comment field right now with my asterisk just to let me know that's where I'm at the bottom of it. Now, briefly, I'm going to just talk about my suggestions and what I've seen and what I've learned just in observation when you're trying to mark fabric, and a lot of it's just common sense stuff. You need to know what your material is. Is it a poly cotton blend, or is it 100% cotton? You're going to find that a lot of your t-shirts are going to be blends, not 100% cotton, and they do that for 100 different reasons, and probably cost, but also you get less shrinkage out of a blend, right? Pretty sure that's true. The problem with doing the blends and the poly blends, the more synthetic materials you've got in it, I think the less laser friendly it is or is going to be, because the polyester fibers, and they'll melt. They might turn brown or black for if you get the exact settings. But since you're dealing with a poly cotton blend, the poly is going to respond quicker maybe than the cotton will. And what you end up with, in fact, let me just see if I can show you some of these images. No, that's the coins. Who was it that I did this week? That's the gin mitts. There we go. Cotton bag. All right. And I'm not really calling anybody out, but here, let's switch over. This is one of his test pieces, and it actually turned out pretty good. And it says he did that at 5,000 millimeters a second, and looks like maybe 53% power with the overscan, line interval 0.09. And that turned out pretty good, and he was happy with that. And he's like, okay, yeah, that looks good. But then this was his next one, and it didn't have the same results, even though he used the same settings. It had a bunch of irregularities in it. And this is what I'm talking about with the different types of material. And if it's a poly cotton blend, the cotton's going to respond one way, and then the poly is going to respond another. You'll have more melding instead of marking. Or it might mark before it melts, but then the cotton doesn't mark until after the poly melts. And these are the tags. These are not the actual shirts or the bags, because I think he said they were actually cotton bags, but that doesn't mean that the tags are. And he was trying to mark the tags. And so I made a couple of suggestions with that, because that turned out pretty decent, but he wasn't able to repeat the same success or the same result. As I mentioned, that mom with the laser, she did a really decent job, but I think she did it with I think she primarily uses the CO2 lasers, but regardless, it was a denim jacket, which, 100% cotton denim jacket. And she marked the back of it and had a really decent result. Now, I don't know how well that's going to last, or how, by doing that, does it weaken those fibers, and after it gets washed 2 or 3 times, do they start to want to rip and come apart and fray? Maybe. But when you're dealing with blends and you got different types of material, and also depending on the quality of the, even on the 100% cotton, if you're doing 100% cotton, you have sometimes your shirts, they itch and they're not as soft, and it's because they got the way they're woven, there'll be hard spots or clumps more or less in the material. Well, they're not going to burn as well or as evenly. And so marking and engraving materials, I think, is kind of a cool idea, but I think it's going to be something that you're going to have to spend a whole lot of time testing with and get familiar with. And one thing that I like and I appreciate, and I kind of giggle a little bit too about Clack, when he finds a product that he likes and he finds the settings for that product that works, he's not interested in deviating or changing or experimenting with anything else. This works. He's figured out how it works and how well it works, and it works this way with these settings. There's no more need to go and start experimenting or trying different things. He gets the result that he wants this with these settings. So but that only comes with trial and error and figuring out. But once you find it, stick with it. So that here you've seen an example where he got a really good result on one of his first tags, but then he was never able to reproduce it. So it might be kind of a fun gimmicky kind of thing, but it's going to be something that's going to be its own learning curve to find the right product that marks well and consistent. So I see some questions and comments here. Chris says the man-made fibers will melt and shrink in most cases. Yeah, those polys are not going to. You might get a little discoloration initially, and then it's going to melt and shrink up. But if it does begin to discolor, it'll probably discolor before the cotton will, and then by the time we get enough heat in it to discolor the cotton, it's melted the polys. Yeah. So, and that's why I would try and stay away from the poly cotton blends if you're going to try and mark material. Yeah. And Chris backed me up there, says, yeah, she did that with the CO2, that mom with the laser. And that's a cool video. And whenever I met her at LBX, the first one last year, she was actually wearing that denim jacket. It was kind of cool. All right. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is another viewer and patron. He contacted me about doing some coins. He's wanting to do some coins, and he sent me a design and a file. And there were some things that I changed about in the design, and I'm going to go over all that with you about how to get the alignment. And I'm going to focus this so I can get it really good, and we'll take me out of focus, take that into focus. There we go, a little bit better. Getting the spacing around, check out my wood and the Hobo Nation, getting it evenly spaced around both of those circles and getting everything centered up, because some of you that have been doing this for a while and have worked with graphics and with text, you probably already wear this. Some of you probably not. All font, even if you're using the same font, the 26 letters of the alphabet are going to be different size, different widths. And when you start curving the text, like I did with the Hobo with Wood and check out my wood, or the Hobo Nation, when you start curving that text, because those letters are not all created equal, unlike being able to select the text and then select your square, your circle, and tell it to go to center, you start curving your text, that don't work anymore. You have to start using the tools of the curve feature, and you'll see that in Lightburn here in a second, because we're going to design this from scratch. And then I'm going to give you my suggestions about how to cut this out. I'll give you some hints and tips. I talked to Dimitri last night about the MK1, and he still has his MK1 and uses it. And I talked to him and refreshed my memory about the hurdles of doing the MK1 with the larger module and the reduced workspace, because when you put the larger module on the MK1, you lose some of your workspace, and you have to, and the MK1 does not have the pins in the honeycomb. So the honeycomb can move a little bit. And if you have any movement with your material and or the honeycomb, then doing double-sided pieces like this is near impossible when it comes to getting things centered up. So I'm going to give you a couple suggestions and tips on how to overcome those hurdles with the MK1 that won't apply to pretty anything else, because the MK2s and newer, they've all got the pins and the honeycomb is locked in place, and it's just one of the many things that Roly learned as they progress with their technology. Let's see here. Let's, in fact, let me come over here, go back to inbox, and no, not that, not that. Oh, yeah, okay. So let me open this up and get this one expanded. All right, and I told William I was going to be. In fact, he's wires under the name screen. Oh, okay. Well, since you brought it up, and I should have brought it up right out of the gate too. Those are the names like Chris here. You see the S after his name. I guess that's Dale. That is they are supporting the channel. In fact, they're not just patrons. Many of them are patrons, but they've also the end of the month last month, YouTube sent me an email and asked me to turn on the not that one, this one here, the memberships. I think it's, yeah, memberships. They asked me to turn on memberships for my channel. And I had not done that. Several other people and other viewers have that on their channel, but I was like, keep it simple, stupid. Everybody go over to Patreon and sign up for Patreon. But YouTube had a deal out there. It was too good to pass. It's a they offered me up to a $2,000 bonus if I would turn on memberships for my YouTube channel. And if you are, but depending on where you're watching, if you're watching on your phone or your TV, if you can't see the comments or whatever, this is sometimes a challenge to find. But I'm going to click on here, mute it. There we go. So now when you open up the channel, it says become a member of this channel. Join now and get access to exclusive perks. And I'm going to say no thanks and close that. But right here is the join button. And if you join the YouTube channel right now, I did this initially as a limited time offer because it's only between now and I think, in fact, I might be on the deadline. Let me go look. I'm just curious now since we're talking about it. YouTube. But they, just by turning on that membership feature, they said they'd give me $1,000 bonus. Period. Just turn it on, they're gonna give me $1,000. Then between the time I turn it on and a certain time frame, and I'm wanting to see what that date was for. There we go. Nope. There we go. Between the time I turned it on and it ain't gonna tell me there. It's somewhere in here. I have to find it. But they have a certain deadline that they'll give me an additional $10 up to 100 memberships. So potentially another $1,000 just by activating these memberships. So what my plan is and what I'm doing is I am, for those that sign up on the YouTube join and the membership, it's $9.99 or $10 a month. If you sign up for 3 months on the YouTube membership, I'm going to send you one of the new t-shirts that's going to be the Hobo Nation instead of Hobo with Wood. And I'll send it to you at no cost and pay the freight to get it to you, all that, if you are a member for 3 months. But YouTube's taken, I think they said it was 30% of the memberships. It's high. A lot of places are, 20% or less, but YouTube's taken 30% of these memberships. So I don't anticipate keeping it once I get their incentive money from them. Once I collect that incentive money, I'm going to recommend anybody that's wanting to be a $10 a month supporter, cancel the YouTube thing and go over to Patreon. Because on Patreon, you have 3 levels. You've got $3 a month, $9 a month, and $20 a month. And the Patreon page is the better. There'll be more files, more incentives, more free things and I want to try and keep it simple for me and my brain. So keeping it all focused in Patreon and having the different levels in Patreon's easier. But right now, that's why those names are in green. After 3 months, and I don't care where you're at, like Steve here, pretty sure Steven's in Great Britain, pretty sure. But he just signed up. And if he signs up and he's a member for 3 months, I'm going to ask him what size t-shirt he needs, and I'm going to send him a t-shirt to Great Britain. I'll pay the postage. I'll pay everything. I'll pay it all, get it all to him, just because I'm trying to get that extra $2,000 from YouTube. I'll be candid with you and tell you I ain't gonna. That's like this Jinmitsu. They're if I will feature it, they're going to give me a link and I'll have commissions off anything I sell. Hey, that's great, but I'm not going to give you a positive review on it if I'm not positive it's the right thing for you in the right situation. But it's like, I guess, kind of like your tennis shoes. One size don't fit all. So while this Jinmitsu might be great for people doing craft shows and little bitty trinkets, somebody wanting to build something and make something like this, I love this. It was a mess, but this is one of my zebra wood jewelry boxes. You'd never be able to make that with the Jinmitsu. And it'd be a waste of money if that was your end result or your desired result. Oh, all right. So now we talked about marking the fabric. Now let's talk about designing these coins. Let's see here. I don't want to. Well, like I said, he's hopefully he's in the stream. I told him I was going to be live today, and I'm going to a question mark. $2,000 is someone buddies with Elon? I ain't really sure. I'm not buddies with Elon, but let's see here. So all right. In fact, Steve I was looking for that email requesting the help with these coins, and in doing so, since Steve just signed up as a member, he also just sent me his this is his one-sided coin, I think he said. Yeah, one side of my coin. So he may already have even a double-sided coin. All right, let's see. Coins. All right. So here are some of this was William who sent me the request to help him with this. And his was some of his first attempts. And you see where he's having a problem. Got the skeleton on there, but then trying to get the reverse done. And it's a little bit off center, and don't want that. I won't go away. He sent me his 2 files, and let me address that. Squirrel. If you have a request for help with any kind of product, not any product, but any kind of file, you can send me 100 different emails telling me the problems you're having. But if you do not send me the file, I cannot help you. I need the actual file you're working with that's creating the problems you're having, and I need a clear, concise list of the problems you're experiencing. I will, and the file, and then I will look and see if I can duplicate those same problems, and then give you advice on how to overcome them. But if you just send me 16, 20 emails with all the problems you're having, it don't do me or you any good whatsoever. So he sent me those photos, and then he sent me the 2 files. He had, in fact, he had a file for the front and he had a file for the back. And I want to show you how that's not the best way to do it, and how to do how I recommend doing double-sided images. And make no mistake, I am not the first one to do these coins. As you've seen, Steven's got them over there in Great Britain. There's another. Just throw it on the floor. There's another Yankee that's got a coin out there that's, but I'm going to be addressing the issues with the MK1 that I don't have. I gave mine away. And my design tips and suggestions on how to get the perfect alignment with your double-sided coin. Let's see here. I'm looking for any other images he sent me. No. I redesigned his coin, and I'll show you that too. And then I designed my own, and we're going to look at that. So let's see. So Bill, you're here. Yay, Bill's here. I'm going to mark this again. And now I've got that marked, and I'm going to change my banner, change it from the Roly. If you are looking for the website's just simple there. It's hobowithwood.com. And we'll throw that up there. If you have not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. I think Chris mentioned a minute ago, we're knocking on 10,000 subscribers, knocking on that door. But if you're a regular viewer and you're not subscribed, if you're here today, you're probably a subscriber because it's 3 p.m. for me, and ain't a lot of people here. It's a nice, pretty day. They ain't no nobody at home watching YouTube. They're out having a good time. All right, so let's look at Lightburn and look at go away with that and file import. I'm going to import his. That's that one. Did I not? Did I not? Did I not? Did I not? I need to download it again. Oh, that's right. My initial work with his file, I actually did on my laptop in the RV, and then come back here, download. There we go. Download that and download that. Okay. All right. Lightburn. Import. All right. So this was one file he sent me. Let's get that out the way. And then import the second file. So this one's labeled Let's Dance, and this is Let's Dance Front. Open. So he sent me 2 different files with the front and the back coin. And I'm guessing these should probably be on a toolpath. So that was his initial design. And I'm going to talk to you briefly about the fonts and the headaches that fonts create. And some of this video may be so basic and so elementary for you guys that you're like, I know that, I know. And then some of you are going to be like, oh, I had no idea. But this right here, and now what I'm about to offer you is my opinion. And you know what opinions are like. There is also, it's easier to read when something is not in all caps. Capitalizing the first letter in a sentence and the rest of all lowercase, or capitalizing the first letter in a word and then lowercase. But all caps, and this is not my opinion, this is a fact, all caps are harder to read. But because of the problems you have with the fonts and the way font sizes are done, when you're working with something like this, and especially with curving the text, upper and lower case starts having its own set of problems. So when I looked at this and seen this layout, I was like, okay, this is a little bit busy. It's a little bit hard to read. And these are some coins that he's making for giveaway. It's not something he's selling. They're going to be like challenge coins or just thank you coins. And there's his initial artwork for the skeleton, and I'm going to get rid of that. But let's look down here at the font real quick. I'm going to open up a Arial font, and just to make it easier to see, I'm going to do Arial bold. Where are you at, baby? Arial black, rather. Okay. And let's do Hobo with wood. Put that on my black layer, and I'm going to blow it up so it's easier to see. Now, with this being the Arial is one of the more uniform fonts. And when it comes to doing curved pieces, I like using the Arial and Arial bold or black. Probably it's my more preferred. That's what I've used on here because it is one of the more uniform fonts. But even though it's one of the more uniform fonts, if I come up here and grab a toolpath and I bring it right down here to the bottom, in fact, I'm going to zoom in real tight. And I'm going to put it right on the bottom corner of that W, right there. I just snapped it to it. So that's right on the bottom of that W. It's perfect alignment. But then look over here. Look how far the O sticks down below it. The B sticks down below it there, but not there. The O sticking down there. Any letter in the alphabet that has a curve to it will extend beyond the other letters around it. And because of that, it can cause alignment issues when you bend the curve and try to center it up within the circle. And we're going to see all that in just a second. So if you weren't aware that all letters of every font are not created equal, they're not. And that's where you start having some alignment issues and where you have to overcome. And what I'm going to show you is I'll center it, and it ain't going to look like it's centered. Maybe mathematically and from a perfect, the way the computer thinks, yes, it's centered, but it don't look like it. And I'm going to show you the tool with when you're wrapping it, what to look for and how you can help that and get it overcome what is centered and versus what looks centered. And all fonts are not created equal. That's, in fact, let's do Control D, duplicate that and move it down. I moved it down too far. And then when you get into some of your fancier fonts like that, you know, trying to curve that and make it look good and do it all in bold to make that's a little bit better, easier to see. But then when you start curving it, you start having some issues. It's not as easy to read. And typically, and this what I'm getting ready to suggest to try and make things more keep them as symmetrical as possible, I used all caps. But it's proven that the majority of people do not read all caps as easily as just capitalizing the first letter. The human brain, the eye, it just sees the upper and lowercase better than all caps. And then in today's world, when you type in all caps, you're screaming at people in all caps, right? And so, you know, that's not the best thing either. But from an alignment standpoint and visual, when you're wrapping it, all caps works better. It's that right there shows you've got, because of all the irregular, this one's really low and that, or high rather, and that sticks down really, really low. And now when you start curving it, it's really cattywampus. So it might be pretty, but it's not the best thing for that situation. In fact, let's put this one on Arial. This is Arial black. And let's go ahead and put this one on bold. All right. And this one is 24:3. And that one is also. So here you can see these are the same size fonts, 20.43 and 20.43. and they both have 0 H and V spacing, but those are completely different. So whenever you're designing, if you're going to do a coin or if you're wrapping, and we're talking about coins today, but it's not going to be just a coin. If you're going to be bending your text and wrapping your font within the design, these are things to look for. And we got a few question marks before I jump any further here. Unrelated, but do you still have live help? Yeah, I do. I'm not sure because of your name here, Midnight Sun, if you are a patron or not, but I'm dealing with a lot of personal stuff right now with I'm having to turn my shop back into a residence, and I've got some things going on that's been taking a lot of my time up as I start to transition into a caregiver. And so my time is pulled in 100 directions right now, but I help my patrons, especially if they send out a request for help, then I do my utmost best to try and answer their questions immediately. And then when necessary, I send them a link to a studio like this, and we'll jump in and one-on-one I'll help out. And usually it doesn't take but a few minutes, but I still do that. Yes. All right, so that was I just seen those question marks and wanted to address that. Unaware that it was unrelated. All right, so now that we are back to the fonts, so depending on your area, your fitment, you might need to be doing Arial Black, or you might need to do regular, or you might need to do bold, or you may need to do all caps. Maybe you don't need to do all caps. But let's do, I'm going to do this again, say Control D, duplicate it. And this one, I'm going to do Arial Black, and we'll do it in all uppercase. And that's Arial Black. These are all the same size fonts, 20.43, but look at all of the differences in their overall size, even though they're all the exact same size font. Now, let's look at wrapping this, bending it. So if I've got a coin, let's put that on the cut path and show the cut path. And I want to bring this down here and put it in the coin. If you're not aware about how to bend your text, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my shift button and select my circle and tell that to go to center. So right there, that hobo with wood is centered up in that circle. If you select just your text, you get this little blue dot right over here. And I'm going to put that on a line mode so it's just easier to see all this right now. Okay. So there's a little blue dot. And you get that little curved line when you hover over it. Well, that's your dot for bending or wrapping your text. And when you click on it and start to move your font, you see that blue circle appear, and that's showing you the size or the circle of your text as you're wrapping it. And I use that whenever I'm wanting to center up my text. Now this is going to be way big, or actually my circle is going to be way small. So we're going to do this and tell it to be, actually it's not. That's about a 4-inch circle. So we're going to make the font smaller. So if I bring that down and bring that up here, and now if I take and center that back up, that's centered in the circle, and you see the gap between from the T and the red cut is closer than this gap. Well, I bent it too far. So I'll select my text again and come back to that circle. And what I look for when I'm wrapping my text, see the blue toolpath? When I click, as soon as I click on that dot, that blue toolpath shows up. And I use that, as you see, you pull it in, you start seeing it getting further and further away. You can use that spacing as a visual guide to help you see when that's going to be. That's looking pretty good there. That looks like that's wrapped pretty evenly. And another thing you can do is, and I did it on actually I did it on both sides, but I did different techniques. Come in here and do an offset, do it inward, and give it 2 millimeters, and say okay. Don't delete the original, and do another one and do it a millimeter. Select the resulting object and say okay. And actually I need both of those, put both of those on the black layer. And now when you put that in a fill mode, that gives you a line running around there. But when you're looking here, it just gets you that much closer, and you can see that that blue line around Hobo with Wood is running fairly parallel with that outer perimeter. And now if we put that back in fill mode, you see that. And I did, and you can edit your text even though you've already wrapped it. I went back to my text and just clicked down here. I don't want Hobo with Wood. I want Hobo Nation. And that'll give me it right back in there. And that looks pretty centered up, because when I look at that and I go over here and find that blue dot, that doesn't look terrible. That, using just by simply clicking that font and that circle, that looks pretty good. Now let's do the bottom. Center that up. Let's see, got a selector tool first. Center that up in the circle. And now that it's centered, I'm just going to use my arrow keys to bring her up and then get it about where I think it's going to need to be. It's moving too slow. And I'll just have to center it again. I'm going to move it up to about there. And now center it again. And now select that and grab that blue dot and start curving it up. And look at that blue circle coming in, and look until I get my spacing pretty even, about like that. But now if you look at my letters, I've bent them in so far, they're locking in together. And I don't want that. But that's about evenly spaced. It's actually, there's that, and this is a good example. This is closer here than that D is over here. That's further away than this. So, and some of you may say, well, it's close enough and it works great. Well, close enough don't work for me. And I like to have things as close to perfect as possible. That way, when there's any irregularities that may show themselves because of the material or anything else, it's not compounding what's already out there. So with this, and I'll demonstrate again, this is, let's see, I've got to put it back in line mode so you can select that easier. So if I got that selected, hold my shift and select that circle and tell it to go to vertical center. Oh, well, it did move. I didn't have it centered up. I guess whenever I resized it again, it changed it. But those are welded together. Go back to selector tool. Welded is turned on. If I turn off welded, then you get that. You don't want that. Well, you fix that by changing your horizontal spacing. Right now, my spacings are all set at 0, but I don't want those letters to overlap each other. So I start changing my horizontal spacing to move those letters out and away from each other. And that's starting to get closer and closer up here. And if I was going to do that, and that's got me good spacing, then I would take and possibly do a dot, just a simple dot, and duplicate that dot and bring it over here. Group those together and then put those in the center, vertical center. There we go. And that would just break up the Hobo Nation. Check out my wood. And then if I grab my, and this will be a perfect example of it's centered, but it don't look centered. Grab my art library, and I'm going to grab one of my hobos, ungroup that, and grab just my hobo. Group him back together. Get rid of this junk. And I'm going to take this hobo, select it, hold my shift button, and select just that outer circle and tell it to go to center. And now that it's in center, I'm going to start dragging that out and making it bigger. Now that I filled that up, technically he's centered in that middle of that coin. But to me, it doesn't look centered. From a design standpoint, I would rather have the body of the hobo perfectly centered, even if his little pouch is a little off center. To me, it's more pleasing to the eye, and this is just my opinion. But that looks like it's off center. So what? Even though I've got it selected, hold my shift and tell that to go to center, it don't look centered. So I'll take that, select it, and now I want to set my movement tabbed. That's a point. We'll do this at 0.02 and say okay. And now hold my control button and start moving that over using my arrows until it starts to look a little more aesthetically pleasing. And that just looks better. To me, that looks better. And if I put that in the fill mode, in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this right here, those two. I'm going to group those together, and I'm going to shrink them down to just about there. In fact, this right here helps me to see that I did not have those. The bottom font and the top font were not equally spaced from the outer perimeter, because when we start shrinking this down, my circles start to make contact with those lower fonts and they're nowhere near the top font. So I'm going to draw that out just a little bit. I'm looking at my flat fonts instead of the curved fonts. The curves are going to overlap before the flat bottoms, and I'm going to look at those flat ones and then compare it to these up here. And I'm going to use my control arrow button to arrow those out until they're about to make contact right there. And that gives them more even spacing. But by moving that closer to the perimeter, I've changed. You can see how this is starting to make contact. We'll make it contact right about there. But here it's not. So by using those circles, now I can use my, and there's a flat end. I can get my bend and start just dragging that back out. And there she's just starting to make contact, and that's going to keep it more uniform. But over there, it's not touching yet. Over here, it is touching. Well, right at it. That's touching. That's not. So if I hold my shift button and select the outermost piece and tell it to go to center again, there, now I moved it back over. So anytime you change the bend or that curve, it is going to, depending on the letters you're using in your script, it could change its vertical center on how much it's curved and or bent. Yeah, and David's made a comment here, and I'm going to address it. But this goes to, there's always more than one way, and there's no one right way. There's lots of wrong ways, but there's no one way that's the right way. And I attribute this quite often when I bring this up. Right brain people and left brain people, they approach things differently analytically versus creative people. They see things and can their mind processes things different. Apple versus Android, right? I mean, the Apple people are usually more creative people. The Androids are more analytical people, and you just do things differently. You can come up with the same result. You got there two different ways. Doesn't make either one of them right or either one of them wrong. As if you got to the same point, it's kind of irrelevant. But David says, you're not taking advantage of all the awesome fonts. Don't use the lazy arc tool. Go back to making a circle and apply text to path. And you can do the text to path, and that's not a wrong way to do it. This is just another way to do it. But now that I've got those evenly spaced and about, in fact, actually that flat area is actually, no, I need to change my, no, I want to bring this out some more. I'm going to bring it up and out. There we go. Because I'm looking at how much these are overlapped down here on the flats and get that about the same. And then I will unwrap it and get that arc about the same. And that's going to be pretty darn close. Now I'm going to take and draw that out. About yonder, say, duplicate that, Control D, duplicate it, and then I'm going to bring that one all the way out to the edge. In fact, what I can do is look and see what that is. It's 128.44. Tell that to be 128.44. And that'll take it out there, and that'll give me a double line there. And now I'll put all that in the fill mode, and that'll give me that. And I'm looking here. This dot looks like it's lower than that dot. Maybe it is. I thought I just took it straight across. Let's look at that. Put it back in line mode. Line mode. We're going to ungroup them and tell them to go to horizontal centers. Yep, it was lower because it moved. All right, and group that back together. And I'm going to bring it up just a wee bit. About there. And now back to fill. So that'd be one side of the coin. Now I want to do the flip side of the coin. Well, if we look at what he sent me originally, he had two different files. He had, this was one side of the coin and this was the other side of the coin. He had two files for that. Instead of having two files, to make it easier to make sure everything is centered front and back on the coin, I recommend using one file, one circle, one perimeter, and have the front on one layer and have the back on a second layer. And I'm going to get rid of all these. There we go. Come down here. I don't need this anymore. And if I grab this, and then I turn off the black layer, don't want to output it, don't want to see it. I've got that circle there. Then I come down here, and if I'm going to do my email address, I can't see it because it's on the wrong layer. That's okay. I will put it on the blue layer so we can see it, output it, and show it. Now, so I can fix it so I can see it, or fix the correct. Woof. HoboWithWood@gmail.com. I center that up, and just for giggles, like I said, there's flip, 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 flip. There's always more than one way, and there's never, well, there is sometimes the wrong way, but if you can get the same result, doesn't matter. But what he was talking about doing, let's take this, and I'm going to do an offset of that circle, and I'm going to bring it down to about there, and select that and put it on a toolpath. Now that's on a toolpath, and I'm going to take this, and I want to, and now this is one thing. There are some things about applying text to path that I don't like, because it will start your text, I think, at the origin point of the path. And it may not be where you want it to be when it applies it to the path, and you can spin the path and line everything up. And that's the reason I don't use it as much as some folks do. But it's not wrong. It's just, it's not my preferred way of doing it. But I've got that font, and I want to put that on that circle. So I hold my shift button, select that toolpath, right click, apply path to text. And there it's applied it, but now it's also upside down and not where I want it. If I, what is it? Where is it? Where is it? Is it this one? Yeah. That flips it around to where it's oriented correctly, but it's upside down. Now I can just spin that around and get it where I want it to be. And I thought I did an offset of that, but it's not centered up. So hold my shift button and select that and center it. There we go. And that will center. Also, it centers it, in the middle of the text instead of at the top or bottom of the text. And actually, you can change that, because right now I've got it set in my settings, a line in the center or the middle instead of top or bottom. And let's go back here and show you those differences. There's Hobo with wood, and you can see that toolpath goes through the center or through the middle of that. So now if I go back and undo that, and I want to change its alignment, I want to align it to the top. Let's see. Come on. Align to the top instead of the middle. And now hold shift and select that toolpath. Right click and apply path to text. It aligns, instead of the text running around the middle of that, it's running around the top. And then I can spin that around to get it. And actually, no, I just need to flip it. Let's see, flip that, rotate it. But now here is, and this is why I don't use it enough. I may be using it incorrectly, and David might chime in and tell me, yeah, if you do this or do that. I did an offset of that outer circle, and it was a perfect offset. But when I applied that text to the path, it changed that, and it's no longer an exact offset. It's not even centered up in the circle. Everything moved. And there we go. Now it's snapped to the center, and that's lined up again. But here's an example of what I was talking about. The H is all the way out to the outer perimeter of that toolpath, but because we're lowercase, this is not. And so it's further away from the outer perimeter. This is closer. It gives the illusion of being a little bit off center. And that's why when I'm doing the curved text, and it needs to have more spacing too. So let's give it some spacing, space that out. I like working with the all caps, and that's just personal preference. But we'll do that real fast. That's close enough for demonstration purposes right now. And then let's do, we'll use this one and put it on the blue toolpath, and then Yeah, well, just do that. Ungroup it. Because really what I want to show you is not so much a design itself, but how to lay out your designs and get a result that you're going to be really pleased with one file. So if I center that up, and let's say that's going to be the back of the coin, that's all we need. So now if I turn on the front coin, there's the front side and the back side all together. I've got the entire thing selected, and I'm going to shrink her down to make sure that's locked, and we're going to do 50 mil. And if you're working on a 300 by 300 piece of material, 300 by 300. Now, I'm going to talk about the design, how it works, and also how to set it up if you've got the MK1 and the larger module, the 1020, because when you've gone to the 1020 module on the original MK1, you are going to be sacrificing some of your work area. Your work area gets smaller with that bigger module. And the way you can overcome that, and my phones are ringing. All right, now there we go. That's in the bottom left corner, which is the home position for the rollies. But if you have the larger module on the original MK1 or LaserMatic 10, you are going to lose some of your work area back here, and your honeycomb does not lock into place. Your honeycomb can move around just a little bit. And guys, I'm having to check this. I'm sorry. I got family I got to deal with. Don't go anywhere. They're outside the front door for whatever reason. Hold on a second. I'll be right back. I'm sorry to leave you, but those who know know. And I'll be right back. My deepest apologies, folks. Sorry. If you know, you know. And okay. So anyway, the MK1, the honeycomb moves. Your bed's going to be smaller if you've got that larger module. And I talked to Dimitri last night, and he still uses his. And the suggestions were, if you have the MK1, take that honeycomb and push it back. Push it back as far as it'll go in the retainers for the honeycomb bed. Now, the honeycomb, when you do that, you have those rivets on the external frame of the honeycomb. And when you push it all the way back into the material or into those holders, that far back right retainer for the honeycomb will have that rivet inside of it. But this rivet on the bottom is going to be outside of the honeycomb retainer. So this is going to cause it to be cocked just just the width of that honeycomb, not much. So it's not going to be perfectly square. That's not going to prevent you from doing this. It's just one of the hurdles that you're going to have to be aware of, and that you're going to use your placement to overcome. You can go to the trouble of using your frame feature of your laser module, or turn the fire button on and run the laser back and forth up and down the one side of the honeycomb until you move that honeycomb and get it centered up. You don't need to do all that. You don't need to do all that. You do need to get it as far back as you can possibly get it. And as far back or as far forward? Pretty sure Dimitri said he goes all the way to the back. And it's really what my next couple of tips are going to make it irrelevant. Get it into a position, because right now the MK1, it can move just a wee bit. And it's not a big deal unless you're trying to do double-sided pieces. If you're trying to do double-sided pieces, then it's a huge deal. Get that honeycomb in the MK1 pushed into a corner of the honeycomb retainers, and then take some scrap material, take just a little chip or whatever, and place it between the edge of the honeycomb and the honeycomb retainer. There are little L shapes that the honeycomb sits on. And we'll kind of wedge that in place so that the honeycomb can't move. It's now tight and in a fixed position. Even if it's just a wee bit out of square, not a big deal if you follow the rest of these tips. But it is essential that you get that honeycomb slop taken care of. The MK2 and the XW, they have the pins so that it will hold that honeycomb in a very fixed position and it's square and you don't have to worry about it. This is only for the original Roly MK1 LaserMatic 10s that have this issue. Wedge something between your honeycomb and those retainers to hold them in a fixed position. Then, once you've done that, know you're going to sacrifice. You're not going to get 100% use of your material because your work area has been reduced. And you could actually, once you do that, take and put you, if you're using the material like I use, which this is one of the skeleton where I cut out my coins last night. That's 300 by 300 millimeter material. Take that and wedge it all the way down into the bottom left front corner of your honeycomb. And now with your honeycomb forced into, and this is only, and actually this would apply to anybody who has a honeycomb and it's not in a fixed position. But if there's some honeycomb holders, you don't want that honeycomb to move around even a millimeter or two because it's going to change. It's going to mess up your alignment. Get your honeycomb fixed in position. Then once your honeycomb's fixed in position, take that, your material, put it in the bottom left corner, and then use your retainers to hold this down to the honeycomb so it can't move. Now, these next couple of steps are specifically about the MK1 and or any laser that doesn't have the ability to have the exact precision of the XW or the MK2. Once you've got this material on your honeycomb and it's locked in position, your honeycomb's locked in position, you're going to then, in fact, let's go over here and set up our array. because we know that the 0, 0 is going to, it should be here, but because of that larger module and the size of it and we've changed the position of the honeycomb a wee bit, it might be up here a little high or something. So we're going to allow some extra space around the perimeter of our honeycomb as we set it up and lay it out. Now, right now, all I have on here to cut out is a single coin. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my engrave layers. Turn that off, turn that back on, turn that off. And I need to move that down in priority to there. Okay. So now, in fact, I'm going to turn off my toolpath. So there is one coin. And I'm going to add a finger hole. I'm going to come up here and grab a circle. And I'm going to hold my shift button and just draw out, or control shift, draw out a circle and put it on the red path. And now, I had some issues last night when I was setting up the piece that I did. I was having some problems with the way that it was wanting to jump around and cut around. And this is what I did to overcome the issues that was being created from this. I want this just to be a finger hole to lift the coin in and out of my template. So I'm going to bring it down a wee bit. It's centered up, and I'm going to put it about there. Now, the new version of Lightburn that's coming out, 1.7, I have not looked at it, but this is something that everybody who has looked at it just is, oh, I love it, I love it, I love it. They added a new trim feature, a new trim tool on the, I guess it's going to be on the left side of Lightburn, where you can come over here, and I think it's the symbol is just a pair of scissors, and you can turn that trim tool on and come over here and click on a section of an item, and it will trim it away. Well, you already have that. They've just created a shortcut for it by putting it over here on the toolpath. If I come over here and I go to, and actually because this is a circle, I need to convert it to a path. And then I'm going to go to my node editing, and I'm going to come up here, and anywhere on this line, if I hover over it long enough, well, not there, not on the line, over here on the node editing tool, if I hover over that long enough, you'll see there's T for trim line. Well, that shortcut they've created for 1.7 is just that. So if I just hover over the line and hit the letter T, it's going to trim everything away except for what's outside that circle. And so there's my finger hole. Now, I don't want to weld these together because the large complete circle, that's the actual coin. That piece that I just trimmed away from inside the coin, leaving the outer part, that's the finger hole to lift that coin out. You only need that on lasers where if you have the MK2 or the XW, this is something I don't feel like you absolutely need to do. And I'll tell you the difference in them after I finish this. But for lasers, the LaserMatic 10 and any other laser that doesn't have that honeycomb in an absolute fixed position, I strongly recommend doing it this way. Create that finger hole on your material. Then once you've got that, I'm going to turn everything else back on. And I'm going to select that entire piece and group all of that together. Now that that's grouped together and I've got every layer turned on, I can move that, and I'm going to put it about here. I'm coming away from the edges quite a bit because you remember my workspace has been reduced on the MK1 because of if you have the larger 1020 switchable or the 1030 switchable module. And then I'm going to come over here to my array tool, and I'm going to start creating rows and columns. And I'm going to shift by half so I can get those finger holes up in there, pretty tight. Now, if you have your Y spacing set at 0, that's what it's going to look like. and you're not utilizing as much of your material as possible, because you can decrease your Y spacing and take it into the negative and bump those on up there closer together. And I'm going to see here. I got, yeah, I'm not going to push it with 5 across. I'm going to do 4. Yeah, I'm going to do that and then increase my rows. And that's too many. 5. Come on. Why is it going from 4 to 6? Let's do 5. There we go. Now that that's all grouped together, I'm going to hold my shift button and select the toolpath and tell that to go to center. And now I've got a large buffer area around the edge of my material, so I don't have to worry about the size of my work area being reduced due to the larger modules on the MK1. I'm going to have a lot of buffer area around and be able to cut it out and not worry about it running out of space. That was for the, when working with MK1 or any other laser without a honeycomb bed locked in position. You want those finger holes, and here's why. I'm going to do, when I go to do this engraving, I'm going to turn off my blue layer, no output. In fact, I'll turn it no output, and I won't even show it so it doesn't confuse me. And I'm going to run this job right here. I'm going to run the engraving of the first fill, and I'm going to cut it out. I'm only doing this on lasers that don't have the honeycomb locked in position. And if there's any movement, you had to wedge things in to get them. Doing it this way, you've put your material down first, your honeycomb's wedged and locked in place. Then you put your material onto that honeycomb and you lock it down with honeycomb holders, retainers, or magnets, and it's locked, and your material's not going to move. Sending that first layer out to engrave it, and then cut the circle out, and then it goes back and cuts out that little finger hole. Now you're able to open your lid or take off your cover and lift each individual coin without touching your skeleton. Your skeleton's locked in place. It ain't moving. So now you can just reach in there and grab a coin, take the coin out and flip it over, and it's right back in the exact same spot minus the kerf of your laser. And maybe you've seen it, but I didn't talk about it when I did it. But I changed the design of the front and the back to accommodate for that little bit of kerf, so that if the laser moves, 0.8 of a millimeter, or it's 0.8 or 0.8. If it moves just a little bit, then I've allowed for that in the design. But I will send this to the laser. I will engrave all of those coins. There you are. Get all the coins engraved, and then cut, and then flip those out, or take them out and flip them over. Once I've done that, I'll just turn off the output of the black and turn back on the blue, and send that to and then you even turn off the red, so you're not sending the cut layer out again. You don't need to. It's already cut. So now you've created, because in a sense, what you've done there is you've created your own template. You engraved the front layer and did a cut. And when you lift those out, this didn't move because your honeycomb's locked in place. This locked in place. So you're able to flip these back over and lay them into their own template. Let's see here. Looking for questions and comments. Chris is commenting, I have my extended frame locked with retainers, then the honeycomb locked as well with the corner of the work area, at 0, 0. Yeah. And this is more about, Chris, about those with the OG Roly, the laser honeycomb. If you didn't have one, if you've got one of the MK2s, the original 20 watt, you've got 3 pins that lock the honeycomb into place. Well, the original MK1 or the original LaserMatic did not have pins that held the honeycomb locked into position. And he's followed that up with a question. I just found a new feature with 1.7. I was designing on laptop, then went to computer, connected to the laser, and was open and found it was updated with the changes I made on the design machine. Okay, so you designed on the machine that you downloaded the test 1.7 in, and when you opened it in your other machine that you didn't download, it accommodated for those changes, if I read you right. Yeah, and they have not officially released it yet. I think everything's still in beta. So I haven't even bothered, and I didn't see enough exciting new things that didn't already exist in another format, another way to use it. I think they just made things a little bit more user friendly. I could be wrong, but I haven't seen anything that's truly new or unique. So back to this and the 2 layers. So I had these off, and I did, there we go. I did my engrave layer first and then cut everything out. And then with everything locked in place and it locked in position, lifted each individual coin, flipped it over, and then turned off that one and turned off the cut layer and turned on the back and just set that and then burned it and engraved it. It was ready to go. And now I had all those coins. Now, if you have the MK2 or the XW or any other laser that your honeycomb is locked in position, I would do it differently. And you can get more coins out of your material because you're not having to allow for any work areas changes that were a result of going to a different module that the original laser was designed for. And what I do there is turn everything back on. Grab all of those. Well, it's all grouped. Ungroup all of those. Grab all of these. Delete those. Delete those. If your honeycomb is locked in position and you are comfortable with knowing that when you send it out, that's exactly where it's going to go, then I'm going to do my array. And actually, I'm even going to change my design. If your machine is tight, your honeycomb's locked, and you're not having to worry about your material being put back in the same position, I'm going to get rid of the finger hole. He said finger hole. If I come up here and select just, in fact, it's all grouped. Let's ungroup it. Grab just that and delete it, because that was taking up quite a bit of space on my material. So if I now take that and I can move it on up here to the edge of my material and do an array. That's 5 across and 6 down by having that off center like that, and everything works. I'm not going to get any more, but you see how many more I was able to get out of that. I was only able to get, what was that, 4 by 4. I got 16. Is that right? I got 16 earlier, but here I'm getting 30. So by having a machine with the precision of the MK2 or the XW, and since we're talking about that now, let's change that banner to the Roly. If you're considering stepping up and getting the Roly, MK2 and or the XW, I'd appreciate it if you use that right there, hobowithwood.com/Roly. Let Leo and Dimitri and all them know that, hey, Steve talked about you, and I like the idea of that. I want to get one of them, and I'm going to use his code. That'll help support the channel for a little bit. Let's see here, switch back over here. But here I've gone from 16 to 30, almost doubling the number of coins I can get out of the exact same piece of material, because I don't need those finger holes. And say, okay, I want to group the results and select the results. So those are checked. And now I'm going to hold my shift button and select that tool path and tell it to go to center. And that's going to center that up and make sure I've got plenty of room top and bottom. Now, since the machines I'm talking about now have got everything locked down, the honeycomb's not moving, I'm going to take my material and slide it over into the bottom left corner to my home position and make sure, just in case there's any out of square on the material, even if it's only a 0.5 millimeter or so, I will push that down into the corner of the material. And if there's just a little bit of wiggle room to make it where I could bump it and make it line up to the y-axis or the x-axis, I'm going to go to the corner and to the bottom of the X. And if there's a little bit of gap there, there's a little bit of gap there. So be it. But I'm going to know exactly where that position's at. Then I'm going to do the same thing about running one layer, but it is going to be one layer, not two. With the module or the laser that's got everything locked down and in position, and I'm going to be able to reposition that material exactly in the same place again. I'm going to take this and I'm going to actually, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say no output of my blue and no output of my red. I'm not even going to, all I'm going to do is engrave that first layer. Select the entire thing, send that to the laser, and it's going to engrave that first piece. And now once that finishes, since everything's precision and locked in place, I'm going to take this whole thing and just pick it up, flip it over, go back to the exact same position again in the honeycomb, and then go back and turn on the other two layers and turn off that one. So I'll turn off and not show, and then turn those back on. And then I'm able to engrave the flip side and cut out once it's finished. And then I'm not having to pick each individual coin up because they're not cut out until the job's actually finished. That's how I do it, and that's only my recommendation. If you do it any other way, it's not wrong. It's just the way I do it, because it keeps me from having to pick up. In this case, it was what did we say? 30 coins. Instead of picking up 30 coins and flipping them over, I can just flip over the whole material. Let's see here. All right, no more questions on that. We're an hour and 30. That's timed out pretty good. We're right at 90 minutes. I do need to go check in with the family and see what's going on. Does anybody have any questions about what we talked about here today, or even if it's any other questions, any other questions, comments, feedback, anything from the peanut gallery out there? So I've gotten a lot done in this past week. I've got all the plumbing all roughed in. I'm ready to start putting drywall up, start putting walls up. Still got a little bit of plumbing to do. And it's the craziest thing. And I'm kind of stalling right now to see if anybody has any questions. But this week, I went and started looking for some LVT vinyl flooring and some other things that I'm going to need for finishing up. And I got in, and when I was in Facebook posting stuff for Hobo and answering comments, the Facebook feed talked about one of Home Depot's competitors going out of business. And I'm like, okay, in my area, Home Depot competitor, first one I think of is Lowe's. I said, Lowe's ain't going out of business. Who's going out of business? And I click on it, look, it's L&L Flooring. And it used to be L&L Lumber, I think. And so they were a much larger business. And then they downsized and they're doing just flooring. And L&L Flooring is going out of business. And I have one here in town. So I said, I'll go over and check that out. And that was on Thursday. And I found some stuff. And because I'm working on a very, very, very tight budget. I don't go into any store with a preconceived notion of what I want. What's on sale, what's on closeout, and can I use it? And that's what I buy. So there with the store closing, and they had some stuff marked down to half off, and it was the thickest wear layer I found of anybody. Because I left there Thursday and went to compare other places. Nobody even had anything that was as good as this. So I was like, okay, great. That was Thursday. So I go back today to look and get it. And the guy told me, he said, as long as you're back by the 10th, this sale is going on until the 10th. You'll be good. So I go back today, the 7th. And when I walked in, his shelves were all bare. He was there. I said, what happened? He said, they changed their mind yesterday. I said, what do you mean they changed their mind? He said, they decided they're not going to close all the stores. They're just going to close some of the stores. And they ramped that up. And instead of us closing on the 10th, they're closing us down pretty much now. So the price he gave me on Thursday is not even any good for him anymore because he didn't have it in stock and he could, and it was a heck of a deal. He said, but if you drive to 2 or 3 counties over, there's another location they're not going to close. They're still open and they'll honor that price. And so, okay. But then I also, one of the furniture businesses here in town, Badcock Furniture, Badcock got bought out by Cons here back several months ago. And after they got bought out by Cons filed for bankruptcy. And now they're closing all the Cons and all the Badcocks. And I know the local owner of the Badcock franchise here. So I stopped in and seen him and bought some furniture to create the studio that I'm going to need, and bought a bed, TV, got one of those power recliners to help Dad get up out of the chair and all that. So I got all that done today, and got a lot more remodeling to finish. So now we got some questions that popped up here. Ed says, by shifting by half, and will flipping board not change the alignment? No, it didn't. What I found, Ed, it was more of a problem, and I didn't discuss this. I said I was going to, and I didn't talk about it. Shifting by half, well, wait a minute. No, you're right. Ed's right, guys. I didn't do this. I said this is what I would do. Shifting by half and then flipping the board would cause an alignment problem. Give Ed a gold star for today. He found it. Y'all didn't chime in. Ed was the first one to chime in. By having that offset and then flipping it, now what was over here is now over here, and that wouldn't line up. So shifting by half won't work if you're going to flip the entire board before cutting them out. I did it, shift by half, and flipped them in this template, so alignment wasn't a problem because I was putting it back in this template. Good catch, Ed. Ed gets the gold star and the cardboard cookie. So yes, thank you. And then Roger chimed in. If you flip your wood, yep, you're absolutely right, because it was shifted by half. If you keep them all in columns, though, instead of the shift by half, you can engrave it and then flip it, and your alignment won't change. So yep. And no, Richard, not liquid lumber, lumber liquidators. And maybe that was their original name way back when, and now it's L&L Flooring, because they used to do a lot more stuff, and then they got into just flooring, and now they're closing half of their stores. And Moses says, I need help, but I will email you with a file. I'm off to dinner and theater. Oh, you going to the theater? You lucky dog. Hope you have a good night. And yeah, and please send me your file and your problems, and I will be glad to look at them. And Jim's offering, says, fly me out and I'll do your plumbing. Well, Jim, that's not an option right now because I can't even fly myself anywhere. And I'm fortunate enough to have reliable, trustworthy people to help me with the stuff I can't do. And I actually had one couple who actually offered to fly down here. I think they were from up in New York, New England somewhere. They offered to fly down here on their own penny and help me knock out and that was extremely awesome. But I can't do that. I can't. Helping me financially with just maintaining your membership on Patreon and contributing when you can, that is more of a blessing than that, because I had whenever I had my open heart surgery and I had my huge financial bills, I had people who raised a little money and donated me money to help pay for my expenses. That weighed on me. Having that, it really wasn't a liability. They gifted me that, but it was such a large amount of money that I was gifted and blessed with that my spirit didn't sit right. I was out of balance. I offered to pay back, and one of the folks even said, "Hey, it's okay you offer once, but don't offer a second time or a third time, because that's insulting." I did what I wanted. I did what I did because I wanted to help you and by continuing to try and pay somebody back, well, that takes away their blessing of being able to bless somebody. So instead, what I did was, I did just that. I told folks, I said, "Listen, you helped me out and I appreciate it. I'm kind of back on my feet right now, and I can repay you if you need me to repay you. I'm happy to." If they say no, I took that money and I left it in the bank. And then when I found somebody in need, I gifted that right down the line. I passed it on to somebody else who was having hip replacements and was going to be out of work for a while. And I just passed that money out. And as soon as I did, oh God, I felt so much better. I felt so much better by not having that weighing on me of it was a blessing what they did, but then to me, it kind of turned into a burden of having that. But as soon as I was able to pass that blessing on somebody else, all the weight in the world just got so much better. So yeah, and Chris says that's why he flips the coins. He makes sure he stays with the alignment. John said, "You're feeling the shingles are about gone. I've got a little bit still going on there with the breakout with the shingles. The hives are still driving me crazy. I will wake up with whelps everywhere. In fact, the bottoms of my feet will feel like I've been bee stung, and I'll have huge whelps. And I'll take some antihistamine and then get that under control, and then that'll knock me back out. But eventually, I'll get back up and I can do. But I'm getting there." And Mark says, a temporary cardboard template for doing the backside of the coins also helps. And then he brings up you can adjust your kerf with your template, and that'll help. That's a good idea if you want to make sure it's totally precise. Yeah, no, I don't. No, everything's good. Everything's good. I'm not doing without. Everything is coming along on the schedule that it needs to be on. No need. I'm good right now. Things look good. So we're going to call it. In fact, this is more family. We're going to call this live stream done. We're at hour 45. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. And if you have any problems or questions with any of the files you're working on, send me an email with a list of your problems and the file you need assistance with. And that's what I'll be able to look at, try to duplicate that problem, and then suggest fixes for it. And I'm happy to do that. And I do it for patrons, non-patrons, anybody that has issues. I'm happy to help. So I'm Steve, Hobo with Wood. I appreciate you hanging out. I hope you have a good weekend. And we're going to go do some carpentry. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.